Welcome to We for Warriors Project podcast.
Hello, welcome to the 1620 Lounge. We are here today with the infamous Kris Lewandowski, the Marine, who for you that do not know, was in Oklahoma being medically discharged, got caught with a little bit of cannabis, and was facing at one point life in prison, and now they're looking at 4 or 5 years max. And we'll get to the details soon because it's changing fast. And we're going to learn a lot more and talk a lot more about Kris and who he is and what he's been doing besides his jail issue. But today is an example of the police state out of control. So, Kris, hello, welcome.
Thank you. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well, brother. Doing well. So, how are you feeling right now? What are you up to? How are you feeling right now?
You know, I'm doing amazing. I aced a project today in one of my classes, so I've been having a great day.
Good. So that's right. Since you've gotten out of the military in Oklahoma and been dealing with that, you've signed up for school and you've been in school. How are you? Where are you going to school? What are you studying? How are your grades?
So, been a fun road going back to school, but right now I'm at Saddleback Community College in Orange County, and I'm doing all of the prerequisites to transfer for architecture, landscape architecture, and horticultural sciences. I'm doing a triple major right now. Great.
I love it. When did you start that?
Started it about 2 years ago now. The first semester was terrible. I was on a lot of pharmaceuticals at the time, and building all the way up into this last semester where I'm on nothing but cannabis, sitting right around a 3.0. So doing nicely right now.
Good. And isn't Saddleback, isn't that a church up there in Orange County? Is it totally different?
Totally different. No, there is a church in Orange County that is Saddleback, but the community college itself is just located in close proximity to this, I guess what they refer to as the Saddleback location. So that's where it got its name parented from. So been all over the U.S. actually, but the majority of my life was spent in California, both southern and northern. Most of the time in my younger years was in and around Simi Valley and Ventura County. And then high school, I was actually up in Pleasanton and Tracy area. I actually played for the Tracy Bulldogs my freshman year in high school. From there, I went to Colorado, where I finished up high school and ultimately ended up joining the Marine Corps from.
Okay, so let's talk about it. So you joined the Marine Corps. You're 18 years old?
Oh, no, I waited until I was 22.
22. How old are you right now?
I am, God, ask me a hard question. 34? 34? God, I'm good.
Wow. I am, but you're still a decade plus behind me. But so what possessed you to join the Marines, and what year was it that you joined?
So believe it or not, there's not a lot of people that know this about my past, but I was trying to be a cop. I went to the police academy at Red Rocks Community College in Colorado. I was one of their youngest applicants. I wasn't even old enough to own a firearm when I entered the academy. I had to wait and buy my own firearm about halfway through so that I could complete the shooting portion. And from there, I kept trying to apply for jobs. Well, back in 2004, that was a really pivotal time for a lot of military, because anybody that was a part of the initial invasion that decided they didn't want to play anymore, there was a lot of them that were coming home, and the military, a lot of guys, it's a very easy transition to go from that life into law enforcement. So when it came to applying to departments and stuff like that, I was getting beat out by prior military. So I initially signed that contract saying, I'm going to do 4 years and I'm going to come back to Colorado and I'm going to be a cop. And that was it. And, then I got out of the Marine Corps and I loved it.
Okay. So yeah, let's talk about that. You joined the Marines. Talk about what MOS were you? We call that in the Army. I don't know if that's what you call it in the Marines.
Yes, MOS.
Okay. So, what MOS were you?
So I was a 0844 and then retired as a 0848. So what that is fire direction controlman, and then an operation chief for the artillery community. So with that job title, I did everything from being infantryman for the Marine Corps to actually shoot artillery rounds in Iraq and Afghanistan.
Okay, so you were what we call in the Army a forward observer, kind of embedded within infantry platoon?
No. Actually, for us, I'm embedded with an artillery battery, And my job is triangulation of fire. So I take what the FO is saying and I put it in different information so that the gun can actually put that round on target. So they like to say we're some of the smart ones of artillery. But
listen, I was infantry. Everything goes up from there from an IQ perspective.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about that. So you were in Iraq and Afghanistan. Walk me through, because I was in Panama. I didn't have the pleasure, and that's not a serious word. I'm tongue in cheek with that, of dealing with artillery and heavy artillery. Where are you, 155s?
Absolutely.
Okay, so you're the big one. So when you got your FO fire, what's that sound like? How tense is that? I mean, is it a pretty calm because of the training experience, or are they screaming? I need, at you guys, or both.
I tell you what, in Afghanistan, I had every man or person you could ever imagine being on the other end of the hooks, asking me for something at one point in time or another, to include other military, where we ended up having translators come in to understand the Georgian military so that we could put rounds on target for them. But you get screaming. I mean, when, it's a serious firefight and you get an announcement the troops are in contact and they need rounds right now, that level of precision and detail really comes into play. I mean, to put it into perspective, the smallest round we shot weighed 96.5 pounds, and I could put that thing in a window at 18 miles away.
Well, that's good. Now, did you ever get any fire on my position type calls out there?
We did.
Take care of your dog. We love him.
We had numerous times, because troops in contact for us, or someone, any type of IED emplacement. I mean, everything from drones calling it. I had received more fire missions from a Goodyear blimp out in Afghanistan than I think anyone else, because they were, 10, 15 miles up in the air with these cameras and could pinpoint someone doing something or track movement. It's how we were able to locate the sniper that I was eventually awarded for eliminating.
Okay, so when you talk about it, how much of your fire incoming was ordered through drones? I mean, were drones a humongous part of what you guys did in 2004, 5, and 6?
No, honestly, drones had nothing really to do with us at that point in time. For the Marine Corps, we didn't even shoot all that much artillery in Iraq, simply because of the fact that the war at that point, you weren't fighting embedded enemies that were putting up much of a fight. It was more of doing cordon searches, security checkpoints, things along that nature.
Someone's happy. He wants attention. Don't worry about it. We love dogs here. So let's talk about that. So you do a tour in Iraq.
Yes.
You do a tour in Afghanistan. You have talk about, you find yourself at the end of this in Fort Sill, which I still don't understand is given it's an army base, but you can go into that. What are you doing after you leave? You get back to Fort Sill, and why are you at Fort Sill, Oklahoma?
Okay, so quick timeline. We have the first deployment that goes on 06, 07 timeframe. My second one, I'm at sea with the Navy on a MEU, and we're chasing pirates off the coast of Somalia. This was back in 09. They made a movie about it. But it wasn't eventful for us. We just sat around like a bobber in the middle of the ocean. It was terrible.
That's seasick.
From there, though, when I got back, we did a rapid redeploy to Afghanistan because of the need for artillery there. The unit that we were replacing actually took incoming fire. They got shot with a Russian rocket of some sort. So there was this huge need to get people in there. What happened for me is I was a sergeant at the time, and I was filling a staff NCO's build. I was filling the job of an E6 as being an operations chief in Afghanistan. Well, the Marine Corps wants you to be certified in everything. I think I even got certified in how to crash in a helicopter with the Marine Corps. So they wanted me certified to say I had the paper that I knew what I was doing while I was shooting artillery. So when I got back from Afghanistan, it was priority number one for them to get me trained up. So I went to Fort Sill as a student, actually 6 months before I ended up going out there on orders. And as a student, the Marine Corps was like, hey, you've done 3 in a row. You got to move. You're going somewhere. So I was pushing really hard to go to Hawaii at that point, and they needed an instructor in Fort Sill. So they were like, hey, where do you want to go? And I was like, I want to go to Hawaii or down to the depot, down to MCRD San Diego and be a drill instructor. And they're like, good, you're going to be an instructor at Fort Sill. And I was like, all right, super duper. So 48 days later, I'm boots on the ground in Oklahoma, freezing my ass off in November, teaching students.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. If you had to judge what location is more advanced in terms of civility, just the people are more advanced, rank them from Afghanistan, Iraq, and Oklahoma for me.
So
okay, that's a joke. I don't want you to get in trouble. Don't answer that because I know what your answer is going to be. Might be in front of a jury.
I'll tell you what, I can be very real with my answer on this to put Oklahoma into a little bit more of a light. So when I was there as a student, this is obviously after Iraq and Afghanistan. So Iraq, in my opinion, was more built up than Afghanistan for the areas that I saw. The areas that I was exposed to in Afghanistan were still mud huts and dirt roads out in the middle of nowhere. I mean, there wasn't a built thing where we were for the last position I occupied out there.
So you're telling me Oklahoma is right below Afghanistan?
Well, in the realness of threat, yes. As a student in Fort Sill, in the operations chief's course that I was in, the instructors come in one Friday afternoon and say, gents, guess what? You can't leave base unless you're in groups larger than 3. It has to be your Marine Corps brothers, essentially, and everybody's on high alert because a gang home invasion went down in Lawton area, and there was some military personnel that were involved in it. So the opposing gang put out a death threat on any and all military in and around Fort Sill. So we were in numbers and literally fearing for our lives for about the last 3 weeks that we were in school out there.
Yeah, Oklahoma. Don't even get it.
But hey, they're worried about me and a couple of plants because I was done with pills.
Exactly. So let's talk about that. But you are getting discharged. How do you get to where? So you're 100% disabled, correct?
Yes.
Okay. How do you get to being discharged?
So I'm in Fort Sill, and nothing against Marine Corps medicine. I love it to death because it will keep you going. The Army is very thorough when they look at you in comparison to the Marine Corps. So what happened is I went in and I reported that I was having some incidents that were happening, occasions where I was kind of sleepwalking and doing some weird stuff, maybe have a little bit too much to drink and get some really weird behavior going on. So I went to go talk to someone about it. In the process, they're like, oh, go and have your body checked out. Let's go ahead and run you through a full physical type of a thing. I was complaining of some back pain. That led into this treatment plan in which I was pretty much in Willy Wonka's candy shop when it came to meds. I could have anything I needed to make my head feel better, and I could have anything I needed to make my body feel better. And if it wasn't enough, all I had to do was let someone know, essentially press the little button, and they're going to give me a higher dosage or a different style. And we'll try this. It never seemed to be where they were working on any type of resolution. They were just mainly treating symptoms.
Got it. And so how does it get to – so you get to the point where you are ranked 100. You go through the med boards, I suppose, and
yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, yeah. So the med board process. So what happens is now I'm seeing all these doctors, and they've got me on all these meds. And I'm sitting at my desk at work, and I'm supposed to be a teacher. I'm supposed to be standing in front of students, and I'm falling asleep at my desk, to the point that I'm drooling on myself. And other instructors are noting this. And granted, it was not in front of students, thank God. But it became this issue. So they send me to the doctor's office, and the doctor's office literally writes me a note from my unit that says, he's going to be like this because of the medication he's on. You just kind of got to go with it. The Marine Corps was like, no longer productive. Let's go ahead and start paperwork. So this turns into about an 18-month process in which my paperwork while I was on active duty was forwarded from an Army base, then to Corpus Christi for the Marine Corps for evaluation, determining whether or not my injuries were recoverable. So was my head fixable? Was my back fixable? Was my shoulder fixable enough that I could essentially deploy again? And after that 18 months, they said no.
Okay. So you're 18 months. They say no. They're going to boot you from the Marines. You start to, are you still on pharmaceuticals at this time, or have you experimented with nature?
I have not experimented with nature besides till I was about 19. I had tried it before, and it was all recreational at that point. I never even thought that it could be a medicine because of all the lies that I've been fed over the years. So what led to it was the doctors noted that I was having liver function problems, and they were associating it to the amount of, I believe it's ibuprofen, that's found in a Percocet pill. And this is right around December of 2012, because when my son Jackson was born, which was on the 12th of December. I'm in California. They've moved my meds around. They've got me on Butrans patches at this point, and I break out in a rash from the patch. So my option is to fight through blisters on my skin to get morphine into my body, or not have the patch and try and figure out another way to now essentially get opiates into my body. So I call my doctor. She can't do anything because she's in Oklahoma. I'm in California with my son being born. Because of my wife being in labor and everything like that. And I end up going into the emergency room when my wife's in labor. And
so what is Whitney? So you're in Oklahoma. What is Whitney doing in California? Is she living in California?
Yes. So I'm in Oklahoma. Whitney moves to California because she was not going to have Jackson born at the Fort Sill or Comanche County Hospital. In her opinion, it wasn't, she didn't feel safe. And I mean, for lack of better words, and wanted to have the care of California. So about 5-6 months into the pregnancy, she went to California, got settled with her mom's house with the plan that at Christmas time, which is when my son was supposed to be born, my Christmas leave was going to be spent in California and having the baby.
And let's be honest, the mother is probably 10 times more helpful than you would have been.
Oh, especially at that point, because, I mean, for our schedule as an instructor, you're at the schoolhouse at 4, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, to conduct PT of all of your students. And you're usually leaving out of there somewhere between 6 and 7 o'clock at night, just getting all of your lesson plans ready for the following day, making sure all your gear's ready, making sure everything's prepped. And then if you end up going out to the field and the time away. So for her, not getting any support with Levi, my other son at that point in time, he was 2 years old and just a firecracker. So yeah, no, it was a much better situation for her to get that support at the time, have the baby, and then immediately after she had the baby, she came back to Oklahoma and we continued to live.
Okay, so let's talk about, do you know off the top of your head how many pharmaceutical pills at your height you were taking?
The max that I remember being on at any one point in time was 13 a day, maybe 15. And I would say it would be more, it was just because if I had more pain, essentially I was authorized to take 13 of the head meds and then the pain pills. So if I had a worse day and I took a few more, I mean, I could have literally been inducing myself to 15 plus pills a day.
Got it. Okay. So not as high as some of the we've heard, but definitely causing you liver issues and other issues. So
yes.
How do you get from there, with Whitney in California,
yep.
How do you get from being an instructor at the school to getting drummed up? When do you start experimenting with cannabis?
So as Whitney's having Jackson, I go to the ER. I get some pharmaceuticals from them. I tell them my situation. Doctor's here. I'm in a lot of pain. They give me the maximum a hospital can give you, which was about a quarter of the strength that I had been on. And I think I got 15 Percocet at like 3.5 strength. So over the course of that day, the next day, those are gone. But now my son's born and I go through an opiate withdrawal. And this had never happened to me before. This is what leads to my cannabis use, because I literally feel like I'm dying on my mother-in-law's couch. My wife is very upset with me because I am not helping with my new son in any way, shape, or form. My mother-in-law is like, why is he just laying around not doing anything? I'm in cold sweats. I can't keep anything in my body.
All mother-in-laws are like that. I don't think it's just yours.
Yeah.
My mother-in-law's the same way.
Well, no, and what happened though is about the 5th day of my symptoms not changing and nothing seeming to get any better. My wife starts looking at the patches that I'm not taking, and she's reading about it, and she's realized that I'm now at the end of an opiate withdrawal and coming out of it. And I literally, at that point, wife and I go back to, family and friends come over and we're hanging out and everything like that. And a friend of my father's, who was a cannabis patient, offered me a little bit of cannabis. And I was really hesitant. I was still active at the time, and I was so scared of the potential of getting in trouble. But he really, he was swearing by it and that he thought that it was going to help. And
yeah, how many times did you get urinalysis at Fort Sill? Much?
It's completely random, but I would say it's at a minimum of quarterly.
Oh, wow. Very little. Compared to when I was in Central America, it was twice a week. So,
okay, yeah.
But I can understand being in Central America why that would be more so. So, okay, so you had room to at least get away with it, you thought?
Yes. Well, and my fear is that I was going to come back from leave, and that's usually a prime time that if they're going to get you, they're going to do it.
Correct.
But there was some overlapping days, and school started, and I knew that if it was, I'd probably have a month leeway. So, and I had just had it the once, I figured there wasn't going to be an issue. And to my knowledge, there wasn't. So okay. What ended up pursuing from there was I got back to Oklahoma, and I'm like, this worked. Now I'm trying to look for it. I'm trying to find it. I find a pretty reliable source.
So you really liked it in terms of what it did for you in relieving the pain, et cetera. What if you had to describe, compare it to what you were doing with the pharmaceuticals? The pharmaceuticals aren't working. They're giving you withdrawals. They're making you sick. You have rashes. You have liver issues.
Okay, so for the little bit of a cannabis that I had, the evolution that unfolded that day was that I was actually able to play with Levi, and that hadn't happened for me in a very long time, because I don't know if it's an actual medical thing that I'm describing, but what it did for me with the opiates is it felt like my body got very rigid. It almost felt like my body was turning to a statue on the inside, whereas at my joints, they were essentially like trying to fuse themselves together. It seemed like it was getting harder and harder to move the longer I was on the opiates. And I'm like, this is supposed to be making it easier, and it's harder for me to get up in the morning. I don't feel like I can move until I've been in a hot shower for 25 minutes. And then I feel like I got my legs underneath me. So to have cannabis, and literally that very same day, I feel like I have no tension in my back. I'm able to move a little bit to the point that I'm actually crawling around in a park with my son. And again, that sort of mobility I hadn't had in 2 months at that point. I had been hospitalized in November for 3 days because of the pain in my back, and they couldn't get it under control after a fusion. And literally limited mobility in any way, shape, or form, to the point that I'm actually moving around like this. It was just a dramatic difference from just one time of using it.
In terms of a dramatic difference for the betterment.
Yes.
It was much better. Okay.
It was huge.
Now you're like, holy shit, I love this. Why is it illegal in Oklahoma? How difficult was it to find a supply?
Again, it was, I knew of a person type of a thing that if I could get in contact with, it would have been a reliable source, and it ended up working out that way. But they had a situation come up where they were moving out of the state. And they let me know this literally about 6 months in advance. And I was like, well, okay, I know you're going to be gone. You know you're going to be gone. I'm going to have to come up with something else. So at that point is when I decided to grow my own, because the other option, he was the only person that had anything that came remotely close to what I would call top or bottom shelf California cannabis. Everyone else had just brick, dirty, nasty stuff that you had no idea what was wrong with. The chemicals that were in it, I had no clue. It was just, it seemed like it was doing more harm than good when I tried that as a product. So knowing that he was...
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry about that.
Oh, no, you're good. Knowing that he knowing that he was going, I mean, I had to figure something out. So I was like, oh, I'll do some research and I'll figure this out. Right around that same point in time, I got a letter from the Marine Corps saying you're no longer fit for duty.
And we'll be right back after these 5 dabs.